CBEX, which also operates under the corporate identity of ST Technologies International Limited, Smart Treasure, Super Technology, recently resumed partial operations, well, reportedly actually, following its shutdown and a fraud probe by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. After being declared illegal by the Securities and Exchange Commission and facing accusations of operating a Ponzi scheme, CBEX is now offering users limited withdrawal options, provided they pay a mandatory reactivation fee. While the platform promises full balance restoration after a UK-based audit, the EFCC warns that complete recovery of the 1.3 trillion naira allegedly lost may be practically impossible, with key promoters still at large and funds traced to multiple countries. Joining me for more on this, I have Kike Shodeko, a risk consultant. Thank you so much, Kike, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, now we're looking at this CBEX, announcing the new withdrawal options and saying that it's still in operation, and that's after the 1.3 trillion naira fraud allegation. Is that hope for investors? Should they be excited about this news?
I think the first thing, of course, it's an exciting news to the people that have lost a lot of money, but we have to consider the rules of the game. SEC says it is a fraudulent business, so they should not be in operation currently. So if there are investigations, we expect that immediately that goes to court, and there should be an interim injunction on anything that has to do with the company. Because sadly, like I said the last time, the law states that for the people to recover their money will be very, very difficult. So this will be like a sort of breath of fresh air for the people that still want to recover their money, thinking that putting in more money means they can get out some money. So, it's still that scale of preference of greed when it comes to trying to deal with these things. When you think the returns can be quickly gotten in a short period of time. And let me even add that it's so interesting that the fraud happened about a few months after they were given a go-ahead by EFCC's team that was also doing their own investigation on the company after they were duly registered last year. So it's very, very important. It's very, very interesting that all this movement, which meant they tried to gain legality, became CAC members by June. By January, EFCC says, yo, you're good to go. And a few months later, exactly this happens, and now they're telling people they can't get their money back. Then after all the debacle, SEC says this is a fraudulent company. They come back and say, you know what? You can begin to get your withdrawals back. Nothing happened to the website, and people are still buying it, sadly. So that's the situation at hand for now. Thank you.
Well, looking at the situation, just like you already pointed out, SEC has said it's operating illegally, and we also have EFCC, going after it and commencing investigation and all of that. Do you think it's a distraction from, what the EFCC is doing, or a plot to re-victimize the victims?
Basically, it's not a distraction. It's just them being fraudulent at this point, right? There is no fear of the law anymore, apparently. So obviously, maybe there are some important people in the midst of it all, and so they can get away with murder in this case, right? Because immediately SEC says you are a fraudulent company, EFCC started an investigation. We know how quick they move when they are doing their investigations, but this seemed to be suddenly slow, right? So it's interesting how the whole thing looks. EFCC says they started an investigation. What entails an investigation? Shouldn't there be an injunction saying you can't do anything, you shouldn't take people's money anymore, whatever is currently in your coffers, let it be stayed locked, so that we know what's going on. But no, these guys are still trading. So hey, at this point, it seemed CBEX is above the law to an extent.
You made a very important point, and I think that's something that of persons have been saying. They are saying, if you have been declared illegal and there is an ongoing investigation and you still have the guts to say you are in operation and that people should even bring more money so they can access their monies, it probably means that, there is a backing somewhere. But of course, we are not sure about that, but that's what it's looking like. And then if you also look at, and if you also look at the business day source, talking about the fact that, or saying or reporting that the platform didn't crash, but only updated its guidelines. Looking at all of that, it still has, the signs, of a Ponzi scheme. I'm just afraid Do you think some Nigerians will probably believe this new withdrawal guideline and go for it?
Oh, certainly. So, no, certainly. They will go for it. You know, like I also said the last time, I said, as we are complaining about CBEX, they are currently running other schemes that we don't even know about. The only time we'll get to know about it is when it crashes or when it goes awry. So that's what I'm saying. And interestingly, I know I saw on the timeline of one of the finance people mentioning that people should, you know, look out for this new Ponzi scheme that tells them to pay in. It doesn't look like a Ponzi scheme from the start, but as you go ahead and go along with it, bringing in people and all those, and then you will see that this is what it is. Sadly, I can't remember the name because the name wasn't given, but that's the thing, because at this point, people would kind of look at it like, oh, okay, if I can pay $100 to get back $400 of my money, you know, let me pay and just get a 400 is higher than 100, you know. So the rationalization of trying to get money and the situation of the economy is not even helping how people think, you know. The greed level seems to deepen when the environment is hostile economically. So it just seems to just work against the people at this point. So that's actually what we are seeing with the whole debacle, sadly.
All right, I know that at the face level you were talking about this, but I'd like you to, you know, more emphatically sort of talk to us about the likely legal and, you know, ethical implications arising from CBEX demand for additional payments to restore frozen balances, despite being under investigation. That's some guts.
Yeah, I know. So if we look at it on one side, the reason they have this guts is our legislators, they saw it, they were like, okay, let's put out a law that says, you know, you can't be fraudulent, you go to jail and all that. But on the downside, the people are at risk that they don't get their money back. That's like at the end of all the legislation is like, we're going to punish you guys for being greedy, you know, so you don't get your money back. So these guys have guts, which means they have a lot of money to have this kind of guts, right? So it means they have good money for them to be able to do this, right? And I think information has it that even one of the key people in the company gave himself to the EFCC for investigations, you know, like it's currently being investigated also by the EFCC, who is generally investigating the whole debacle. So yeah, the law is that you get to go to jail if you do this kind of thing, but on the flip side, people don't get their money back. So that in itself should be what people should look at and say, oh, legislation doesn't care about me, so why do I keep putting my money back in there? 2, SEC says you are a fraud, right? This is an illegal entity, right? But interestingly, how do we quantify the illegality of the entity? SEC says, oh, it's an illegal company. But if you go on CAC, the question is, are they still active on CAC? You know, that immediately should trigger something should, you know, appear beside the name of their company to state that, okay, this company may be duly registered, but something is going on, right? And so forth, and so on and so forth. And sadly, you know, as much as we think we, the educated ones, have access to news and what's going on, those on the streets really don't care about this. It depends on the information they are fed. So how they are fed will be determined by how they also react to the whole debacle. So what they are told, so if, for example, this is happening on the news, all it takes is for a learned person to come and tell someone that's been waiting for their money and say, what's up, man? Like something like they said, oh, this is, they are giving back people's money. Oh, yeah, rush, put in $100. They listen because at that point, they just want their money out. So you see where it goes. So at the end of the day, we'll see who gets to be prosecuted in this kind of scenario. But at the end of the day, it just gets swept under the carpet. So those are the things this kind of companies know already. And they're lawyered up. Believe me, they have lawyers that will be able to back them up anywhere and get to court. And that's the thing. If you know how to understand the law and how it's to your advantage, you get away with something. Thank you.
Now, that's a very sad one looking at all of that, because I would think that with what the EFCC is doing and what SEC has said, the hammer will be big on the company. And but away from that, let's get back to the basics, really, because I'm particularly disturbed by the fact that this is a registered company, howbeit under a different name. It doesn't change anything. I mean, doesn't that cast a shadow on the regulator's ability to spot, you know, some of these bad eggs? And then if you also go by its operations, it falls clearly under SEC's purview. But unfortunately, it began operations without subjecting itself to SEC's regulatory guidelines. I mean, that gives an impression of the intent to be fraudulent in the first place. I'd like you to speak to this.
Exactly. You know, you're very correct. You know, so the last conversation we had, we looked at it step by step. This company came forward. You know, you get to register your company. You know, we are trying to get the economy to come up. So, yeah, get to register. The CAC tries to make their process as seamless as possible. Yeah, they started the process. But considering the kind of capital that is needed for this kind of business, and, you know, they are so great at renaming their companies. In fact, I can tell you for free that all it takes is with CBEX this way, they can just rename the company and just, you know, switch to what they've been doing, and they're still right there active on CAC, right? So it's only if you need like maybe like a deep dive search of the company that maybe you might see this background of them or this foundation of them. It is interesting. Now, the SEC itself, they couldn't even, you know, we discussed this extensively, they couldn't even identify that this company can be fraudulent, you know, they did not. The only reason it became a point of conversation was the number of people that raised issue with the fact that their monies, they couldn't get their monies back. And let's be factual. The most of this kind of Ponzi scheme companies that have existed in Nigeria, the only time we have heard about their operations it's when they've gone awry. We don't hear the SEC cautioning Nigerians on maybe a company coming up. We don't hear the SEC cautioning Nigerians on how to process capital gains and things like that. So we have different companies currently running, and they're running either savings, loan apps and things like that. But we don't get any guideline. We don't get any information from these organizations, these agencies to say they're Nigerians. From our investigation, it shows that ABC company is not the kind of company you should consider investing in, because we have found some this, right? Because the ease of doing business should not cloud the ease of following up with companies and making sure that they are not defrauding Nigerians. So those are part of the things that we require from the SEC and also from the EFCC. The SEC seems to be very strong chasing individuals, but we don't see that same intensity when it comes to companies, and they need to like upgrade or do better with how they go about that. Thank you.
Well, talking about SEC, I would say that to a very large extent, SEC tries to put out information. I mean, it tries to warn Nigerians of maybe some companies they think are not doing the right thing, or some companies they think, you know, are sort of participating in illegal, you know, activities. I'll say that about SEC. But then from what you have said so far, I see the need for a balancing act here, because on the one hand, there is the need to sort of soften the ease of doing business, and on the other hand, we might be considering the need for robust checks, just to be sure that companies are not only doing the businesses they are actually registered for, but they are also doing these businesses the right way. In less than 30 seconds, I mean, what do you think about this? Let's close on that.
Sadly, the Ponzi scheme era will never end. Sadly, I'm so sorry for saying that. It's the reality of life, the reality of what we are currently facing worldwide. Nevertheless, it's very important that we are not swept away by the wave of quick money. You know, it's something that we all as individuals need to look inward to say, okay, yes, it's quick money, but how is it possible for this company to roll out this quick money for me because I want to make an investment and make a quick gain? You know, those are the questions we should ask ourselves internally whenever, because, you know, the way we throw money at this Ponzi schemes kind of hurts my soul, because that's a lot of money. Some people's salaries, people's school fees, people's business loan money, and so on and so forth, all in a bid to make quick bucks. So I will implore Nigerians to, you know, self-reflect before they make those kind of decisions when it comes to this quick turnaround financial gain. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I also expect SEC and other agencies to do more of this, you know, public enlightenment, so that people will know, you know, when to or how to spot some of those Ponzi schemes and other bad ones. Thank you so much, Kike Shodeko, risk consultant, for your time and thoughts on the show today.
All right, have a fantastic day.